All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, at least on the Eastern AVNation ourselves. This session, and Hutson, thank you, sir. Doug is from Samsung, but I'll still say it in virtual chat like this. To chat with us, right? You can ask whether that's so. If that's where you put that this session, that when you look fine,
struggling with the initial drive and from my products that could in my world really any I think falls
is now digital. These experience is digital science.
It's audience externally that you're trying to communicate. So for us, that communication.
Hit the nail on the head already. We look at it as really a transport mechanism for communication. It's not just visual anymore, and it's not just one directional anymore, and more than just visual. It can also be when we see signs, mesh networks for public, use it for public address. So,
Peter, explain, right? Give somebody, if they're not, conversation looks like.
Possibly ways to collect that information, whether it's by looking at your face.
Yeah, absolutely. I did an interview with asked the same Laskowski from AVIXA, just asked the same question over the chat, right? And I'm not that I want at least our audience to take away from. Certainly, sometimes it does feel like
and I don't feel like you're going to get what your customers are calling it. And it was standing in a display that was meant for it didn't connect. What you call digital signage will help you target your message.
That's actually a really good point, is understanding. And the first part of that is understanding who your customer is. Peter and Doug have similar, customers there, and put stuff in. It's a very, the creative part. We mentioned the right images or the right color flow or their digital signage.
I think that this is thinking more broad during their deployment, different user stories are going to be, and how all the different, and you get to your have a strategy wallpaper.
Hey, Chad, magic question. Map look like?
Thinking long term about what that content should be, not just for launch, but how to keep it fresh on an ongoing basis. So I think other creative and done, and it's thinking about how to make it quicker and easier and cost effective. Otherwise, they're going to lose interest. These decisions are made in a bubble. It could be communication is a big twist, having content in the queue ready to go.
Strategy and helping, to what ends up on those.
It's a collection. We're going to stick with digital players, displays, integration, installation, support, the user get it there. And if the technical standpoint is not in place, then the overall goal, this vision of having this intelligent goal-based communication that's important, that we provide the technology that interfaces as seamlessly and easily with in an intuitive and an easy fashion. That's really
right. Peter, you have this. Peter, you have this.
Comes up so often that actually in a couple of digital with me is the idea of signage where you want to do looking for a sign, and so we try to guide them, and we see sort of two camps. We see them, we can steer them down the proper road, but I think big sticking point for people in revenue. So we something we try to help folks with.
I am not the smartest person on this advertising, right? And you make more than you put in, then you're going to ROI when it comes to
experience with your content. You have really no way to measure that, and trying to get out, say, a smiley face, a frowny face, or a neutral face, or asking them to text something, or asking them to call, or standing outside and serve.
Whatever he was done saying there is fantastic, and very part of this is I want a digital signage system, regardless of how I'm at deployment.
So for us,
okay.
And I most digital screens are not, yes, certain offices, factories, how do you back that up to what is the business problem that I'm best way to do that? We have to say, okay, we could put our third-party advertising revenue. So trying to solve, can I solve, way more ammo than I need for this made solution that this route. What is the right combination, what it is. So I'll start if I'm, sense for us internally. What is the cost value to us to solve this business problem? And if the cost working with integrators and hardware companies to implement that.
All right, Chad, same question. When the client comes to you and says,
asking the right questions up front is first. I feel like they know exactly pixel, pitch, LED display, because it's cool. All the right questions. What are the KPIs? and action that could be. What kind of data could be captured if any? Track a turn on people who drive. Where you can track ROI, you certainly can, but of the why, the who, what's the right type of design? What's the form factor? If we're engaging, who are you? Who are you trying to reach? Like, so
let me. And this, I'm being 3 millimeter pitch. Like seriously, I mean, because to Kelly's just should be COVID, and some of that's going to go away. But should you get them out of that mindset if they're
no beating it down? But I think just showing. I always like to use. Let's send you a unit. Let's have you do it. Let's see how you feel. Or go through. Well, it's certainly easy enough to mock them, experience it.
First, we need to understand exactly why, and sometimes, but they don't them so that they understand they have so many stores they have, but not there. Before we ever talk software or anything of the sort, there's a debate on is captivating and motivating that standpoint on down. It is pretty obvious.
And then Doug, who then? Not too.
Well, ultimately, it's the recipient of the community digital signage, a term that I don't think anyone likes anymore. But I mean, it's where they come up with a plan that when finally finalized of the
questions here, what does that journey look like for you guys?
We would encourage you to do a regular business plan for it. It's going to budget for upfront implementation and content, but they make their budget, leaving them stuck. And we hate to see that.
Well, that's the entire cost for projectors, right? Is maintaining, and then you guys are having some really great conversation or shoot them over here. I've got a couple. One of the things that, and actually Peter mentioned this a few minutes ago when we talked about the demographics, right? And capturing who is walking in front of these signs, and the dynamic content is, and not talking about NAV's used it for the last 15, and it scans his eyeball and it says of the industry has done a really great job of serve her up a different ad than its privacy and GDPR. My 2 cents, and this is, I know nothing, but the future of.
Yeah, it's just is now of any type of setting with a privacy by design standpoint, and that it's something that you're thinking about, you're taking to heart. And I mean, at the end of the day, they have a baseline expectation of privacy. And if you are doing anything, but really maintaining the trust with your.
All right, Chad, same question here. Just
call it a digital signage platform, and that is maybe thinking about it. And I see a group like Google, but they're entering what you're doing. We have tools that are readily available in and out of certain specific. Let's say if you have an app that ties into a more personalized experience within a retail environment, it's on your phone, it ties into that, can necessarily protect consumers from that. But I think that between what's happening and get out ahead of any sort of issues.
And on the iOS Plus update, the next time you explicitly making traffic along the or the geopolitical part, from your standpoint, what is the.
Honestly, the future of privacy is in flux. Trend of AI understand a lot of what's flowing in, and that's that consumers gets more intelligent, more customized, more personal because it out there. No. I know that. So I think matures.
There is again, I'm not a psychologist on this, but there is a theory out there about there's a balance. Peter, last question on it. With
the viewer, but there's another example if the wrong person gets into that, and like you've seen on TV where it all from the source to the sign to make some of the content owners care about copy protection, so they're every day now.
All right, chat, we've got a couple from there. And, what is the future of digital signage here in the next year?
We can looking at right now, there's a lot of really amazing content coming in. So I think the knowledgeable public wants to share activations. That's you.
All right, Chad, same question.
With digital signage is using old technology like QR code.
And appreciate the fact it was 2020, our phones, and now suddenly the thing that 10 years ago, digital signage experts were like, oh my gosh, this is great. We can send people to websites now. It has saved our lives. I'm sorry, Chad, go ahead.
That's all right. All hail the QR code. So maybe that will still live along for a while, and it may come. I think that users will probably, Disney does in its own parks when you food, and then they can also have hyper detail, a great experience from that.
All right,
I was
Doug,
like no table. And
it's like 3D. What is
the remaining impacts of COVID? AI era, how to best and online, especially with the well implementing now, where to our needs in that moment. I think that's going to have digital be able to physically interact with what they want. But then my 2 bits.
Compete, which used to be bigger is better, is now getting smaller and can become a display and something very personal and intimate for an individual. And maybe it even has a Bluetooth beacon.
The system to our needs in that moment, I think, is because make it better because they'll be able to physically interact with it to transact.
Customers are struggling to compete for cut with them, so they have very high up with them. So we'll be pulled into
Convince the customer with the checkbook.
On in the hour of not having all the right stakeholders in the conversation. And I think one of the things that you can do, as you're putting together your meeting from all the different departments, and encourage them to bring in someone from the department that would be creating the content and talk about how that fits in, and told by their coworkers that they need to be included in the plan.
All right. I know this. If you want to type in transition to what simple GPIO buttons, where else?
Outside and digital signage on the inside, where else does it work? There's a good, we're basically, and that signs that certain, something like that.
Conversation offline, because this sounds like a much longer answer. Privacy based.
I think there's something to that for sure, as well as where the market's coming from, which is so.
Last question here, actually, I use this generation of digital sign help them.
We're looking into is how to use digital signage, AI, voice activation, devices like Alexa to create environments where you have dementia patients, and maybe even activate a device, high interest, that technology now, who.
All right. Tthank you all.
That's probably
Find me on LinkedIn, Chad Hutson.